Hi everybody, it's Jenny, and today I'm sharing a card for Possum Stamps using this super cute stamp set called Picture Perfect. This is a 6x6 stamp set made up of all these cute picture frame images along with 2 sentiments. There's a bunch of fun ways you could use this stamp set, including adding other stamped images inside or actual pictures. But for me today, I'm going to be adding some watercolor flowers to the inside of a couple frames. So I'm going to start by bringing in some Arches watercolor paper, and I'm also going to be doing some no-line coloring. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp out those frame images with some fade out ink. So at first, my plan for this card was to add my images directly onto the frontmost card panel, and so that's why I'm arranging those frames that way. But while I was coloring, that idea changed. So I'm just going to go ahead and stamp out those images onto the watercolor paper using my Misty. And I also wanted to add the ribbon from the stamp set to the circle frame. So I'm just going to bring in a Post-it and go ahead and create a really quick mask to add that ribbon image to the top of my frame. Once my stamping is complete, I'm going to go ahead and secure my watercolor paper to my craft mat with some washi, and then I'm going to bring in some Caran brush markers to do my coloring. I'm also going to be using a palette just to scribble out my markers onto, and then I'm going to use some paintbrushes to add the color. So my idea for this card was to pretty much create a really fun and colorful gallery wall with these picture frames, and then each one I'm gonna just doodle some really simple watercolor flowers. Once I finished up my painting, I also brought in a gel pen just to dot the centers of my purple flowers, and then I went ahead and fussy cut them out, and you'll see here that I did add a third frame with a tulip. So instead of my original A2 size panel idea, I ended up creating a mini slimline card. So I trimmed down a piece of cardstock to 3.5 by 6 inches, and I'm going to go ahead and do some Distress Oxide blending with some Tattered Rose, Dried Marigold, and Squeezed Lemonade. So since all my frames are cool colors, I thought a light warm background would be a good contrast. So I'm just going to keep going back and forth between the colors until I get a nice even blend, and then I'm going to clean up my space and set that aside to start working on my sentiment. So I really wanted my sentiment to kind of pop against all the bright colored frames, so I went with a hot pink cardstock, and I'm going to go ahead and emboss the sentiment that says, "Our friendship is picture perfect," with some white detail embossing powder. And I also want to separate the sentiment into two separate lines, so I'm just going to use another post-it note and ink up each line separately onto the cardstock. When I added the embossing powder, I still got a slight impression when I stamped out that second line, but I'm just going to go ahead and wipe away that embossing powder with a paintbrush, and then go ahead and melt everything with my heat tool. And once my sentiment was nice and melted, I brought in this tiny banner die to trim out each of my sentiment pieces. And while I was doing this, I realized I probably should have cut out the banners first, because it would have been way easier to get that sentiment in there nice and straight, but it ended up coming out okay. And then I just used the offcut to line up the second banner to trim out the next piece. After that, I had all my pieces and I could start playing around with the layout of my card front. So at first I went horizontal with it, and then after playing around for a little bit, I went to vertical, and I like that a lot better. Once I had my layout decided on, I brought in a paper trimmer and went ahead and trimmed down my panel 1/8 of an inch on each side so I could add a layer underneath. And since my panel and frames are so colorful, I thought that a white background would really just help everything pop. So I went ahead and created a card base using some white cardstock. And I'll just go ahead and fold that up and then add my card panel to that and just check out how the layers are looking. I was really happy how everything was coming together, so I just brought in my bone folder to go ahead and get a better crease on that card base. And then I also brought in my paper trimmer just to clean up the edges of my card base, and then I went ahead and glued everything down. To finish up my card, I brought in this Hello Sunshine sequin mix, and I'm just going to pull out some of the clear iridescent sequins and add those to my card front. And then once I have those in place, I'm just going to go ahead and glue those down. And here is my finished card. I love all the bright colors and the simple watercolor flowers. I just think everything turned out so cute. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!